Well, thank you everyone for joining us on our next installment of Q&A with Epicedium Paranormal, and we are super pleased tonight to have a paranormal expert with us, Mr. Rick Garner.
Woohoo!
Welcome, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. See, oh, yeah, it's a pleasure. Glad to be here, guys.
Thank you. So, founder and executive producer of Unexplained Cases, a YouTube creator. You've been in the biz since, from what I saw, the 90s. You started in radio, and now you switched over to your YouTube channel and your blog, right, on
Oh, yeah.
Unexplained Cases.
Mhm.
And so, what got you into this crazy field back in the day, back in the 1900s?
Wow. So if I wasn't already feeling old, thanks, Gail. I appreciate that,
I'm there with
basically.
you. I'm right there with you.
Is my gray showing? Is my receding hairline? What got me into it? Well, I guess, the simplest way to look at that would be growing up, I always had this fascination with ghost stories. And when you're in the South, I just feel like maybe they're a little bit more predominant because in a way, I've always looked at ghost stories as like they're a part of like family lore, especially if it's a family ghost story, which I didn't particularly have that pleasure. But it's just a neat way to be able to remember history because, I've always said it about urban legends, especially, is there's always at least a shred of truth. There was definitely a person by a name, or there was definitely a location, or both, or whatever. Now, as a lot of times, especially in the South, the little yarns can grow and fishtails can get larger and things like that, and you just kind of heap a few things on there. But it's kind of like how many licks does it take to get to the center of an urban legend or a Tootsie Pop? I don't know what we're talking about, but either way, you can find it. So.
Love it.
Are you the owl in that scenario? I'm thinking of the old commercial.
Who, me? Who, me? What? Don't let the dad jokes come out because I've got plenty of them. So.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. See, well, I should ask the same question though. I'm curious, what got you guys into this? Ooh, we're gonna turn the tables.
You are. Camera's turning on us now.
This is the first.
Well, I'll let Brittany go first.
Yeah.
So I, like most other people, I find that after speaking to them, I was haunted as a child for several years. So, it got to the point where it's like, I think from an outsider point of view, people probably thought, it was in my imagination, I was having night terrors. But my reality was every night after my parents put me to bed, I'd be terrified to see or hear or whatever would happen after this thing would come to me when the lights went out. And it happened like for several years. Like I had no one to talk to about it. So that's what planted the seed for me after like the fear just kind of like bubbled me away from or closing me off, so to speak. Ever since I've been like going down the rabbit hole after rabbit hole, chasing, the unknown.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brittany is like a crazy researcher in that regard. You can't read enough. She's all about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand wanting to unravel that for sure, basically. I mean, that's one where, have you been able to kind of like unpack that and, what was going on?
To this day, I don't think I'll ever know or understand what that was, but it was definitely an energy or entity of some sort. I knew its name back then. I had a mental picture of what it was, but I've like tried to research even the name. I've tried to research like what it looked like, but nothing is like pointing to anything too specific. Maybe like a certain culture.
Okay, attached to land, house, family. Don't know.
It might have been. My current theory is it might have followed me into this lifetime. That's my current theory.
Okay.
But for whatever the reason, I have no idea. So it's just one of the. It'll always be a mystery to me.
Mm-hmm.
But like everything else, the paranormal, that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, well, and that's fueling it, basically. Okay, so Gail, you got to top that then.
Oh, no way, no way. I similar but not as traumatic, I would say. Childhood. We moved from Brooklyn to Jersey, and the house we moved into had a spirit in it, and it used to stand outside my bedroom door. It didn't freak me out as much, but my mom was also very open-minded by it, and like she talked to me about it, and she made me feel okay about it. She didn't like poo-poo it away, like you don't see anything. Like she supported me in regards to that. So, but we knew who it was because it was someone who had died in the house before we moved in. But who would think that moving from Brooklyn to New Jersey would be scarier in Jersey than in Brooklyn?
Fair point, fair point. But see, but I'm over here basically hearing these two things, and I'm like, yeah, I like stories, they're fun, and y'all are basically having these, initial experiences. So pretty sweet there, basically. So.
Yeah.
I think it helps us as investigators when we're helping our clients to be able to relate and tell them, like, look, we've been through this. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're not alone.
Yeah, because your feeling of just like not being able to talk to anybody, I mean, that's part of the reason why, especially being in the journalistic field, radio, TV, having all those chops, basically looking for stories, you're already trying to, in essence, help people as well as communicate information. But in this specific vein, when you have individuals, as you can relate, that you don't have anyone to talk to, or if you do talk to them, they're going to think you're hoo-hoo, or basically you imagined it or whatever, and yeah, you just kind of clam up and you don't share it. So that's where a lot of our challenge over those years, especially early on, but even still today, is convincing someone that it's a safe space to share, which sometimes that may have to be like you protect, you conceal their identity, change their name, change the voice, don't shoot the face, that type of thing like that, just record their hands or something. Because ultimately, if the trust is there and it can be shared, the content is secondary, basically. But that's also why our whole mission is preserving history by documenting the strange, paranormal, and unexplained. First part of that's preserving history. So if you can collect that story, whether it is paranormal, conspiracy, whatever it is, basically, that's the golden part. Because if that person passes away and that never was recorded or documented, then that story is just lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why what you do is so important, and why we love having these conversations for people to be able to listen in on, is because it does give people that voice, that ability to feel validated and know, like, hey, they've researched this, they're sane people for the most part. And I don't feel as crazy anymore,
Yeah. I mean, because all it takes right there is for someone to be able to relate. Or, I mean, even if it's like, there's been so many things that have been shared, and it's like, okay, it's pretty impossible to imagine or grapple with it, especially if you hadn't had that exact experience. But then that's also where I've always said, like, if I have an experience with something and I know what I heard, I know what I saw, I know what I felt, there's no way I can actually prove that to you. It's just like, I know in my gut and heart and whatever else you want to say, that's my experience. But then that's also why, especially from a content side of things, that's why you have, hey, let's have this thing that has lights, and let's have this thing that makes noise, and let's have all this, because now, besides making good TV, it's actually something someone can see. Okay, there's something going on. Mm-hmm. Does it mean that it's paranormal? Not necessarily. Some would have you believe, but not all the time. But that's where it comes. It's important to be able to have that experience, to be able to back that up. Debunk it. Is it real? Is it not? Yeah,
absolutely. And not to like veer off our outline a little bit here, but
you made an outline for this conversation? Wow, Gail, come on, just throw that out the window.
We're just that organized, you know.
we like to at least have bullet points, like, hey, let's talk about these things. But one thing we don't have bullet pointed that Brittany mentioned was previous lives. So, because when she spoke about her experience, do you have any thoughts or theories on that?
Oh, thoughts on what was this now? What'd you say?
Previous lives.
Previous lives. For some reason, I thought you said creepiest lives, and I was like, I mean, you were this right. I could make this live creepy if this was live. No, just kidding. So that's an interesting concept, basically, with past life. Basically, I mean, in the experiences that we've had with basically interviewing people and talking to people, there's obviously a lot that has been shared with folks, basically, that have been on the team and moved on or whatever like that. I, for example, have always found it interesting. Like, my running thought is, I can't swim, but yet I have a fascination with the ocean and with sunken ships and things like that. And I've basically always figured, okay, so I was probably a captain and I drowned. And a medium who was on our team, Miriam Faresh, for a couple of years, that was one of the things I said with her. Now, she never validated or confirmed or denied that, basically, but that was, she's like, well, it makes sense if that's what your intuition is saying. I'm like, I'm not telling you my intuition is saying that, because my intuition and I kind of have a love-hate relationship. Sometimes we groove and sometimes we don't, but I'm just saying it would make sense, basically. That's all.
Yeah, you never know.
No, you don't.
Yeah, they've even had theories that, like, when we're experiencing spirit or ghosts, however you want to refer to it, it might actually be either past lives or maybe time is circular, that it's actually a person who's living in their timeline in that moment, and we're the ghost to them.
Well, that was what I was about to say. That one's fascinating too, to where, especially, there's been a little bit of referencing with time travel. Almost would be like, yeah, if we're actually the ghost, and be like, which I always still think is, this talking about rabbit holes. To me, this goes down that whole, what I like to think of as, like, it's the entertainment side. It's the, you're on display type of thing. And how terrible would it be, basically, especially, if we're being the ghost, basically, if we're hanging out somewhere, and there's people who rotate through, and they're always basically asking, is anyone here? Could you hit the wall? Could you make a noise? Could you move this? Could you light this up? And I'm like, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give you a wedgie, okay? You haven't asked for that, but that's what I'm giving you, okay? And then you're going to run away, and I want to see you again. Boogity, boogity, boo, okay?
Hell yeah.
Could you imagine? That'd be great.
Some people would deserve that. It just be like, because especially if you're watching something, and I'll admit, basically, I don't consume a lot of content. It's kind of like, this is where, getting transparent is a little weird. Like, I should read more books, but unfortunately, I spend probably most of my reading is like online and like bits, smorgasbords, basically. Read an article here, this there, maybe an ebook there, whatever. I should, but it's kind of like, it's a habit that never did. But I always encourage people. It's like, being a bookworm is good, because that's where the research comes in, and that's where the diligence. It's a good habit to have. But it's like, when you look at certain content, and there's like, there's no space allowed. If you're going to ask questions, you give time for responses. I mean, you don't want someone coming up to you, basically shining a light on you, basically, and grilling you and being like, where were you on the night of the 12th at 11 p.m.? And then don't even give time to answer. Okay, and who are you with? I mean, Who likes that? So why would you think anyone else would like it, basically?
Right.
Exactly.
Very true.
That's kind of similar to why when we do investigations, we don't probe. Like, we actually get better EVPs just hanging out and talking amongst ourselves in a location than trying to get the entities to interact with us, because I would react the same way. If somebody was like, I'm in your house and you're going to talk to me, I'd be like, oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
But if we're just hanging out, having a conversation, and they're interested in it, that's when we tend to pick up more EVPs that way, because we're not like, we're not forcing them to talk to us.
Yeah. Or even put it more so along the lines of like, yeah, when you're not even trying. Like, I mean, I think of the example when I was at Penhurst for the first time, which I have a strange draw there, basically. It was my first asylum. And so it's like you're there and you're experiencing that. Now, this was 2019, so this was when they, this wasn't, I don't think, the first Paracon. I'm not entirely sure on that. But obviously, COVID came along, they took a break, and then came back last year, and it exploded, and it was super stupid. In a good way, but just a little out of hand, basically, in some respects, when you compare it back to 2019. But I'm wandering around, and there's enough breathing room, if you will, to be able to like get some B-roll, and I'm sitting here and I'm doing my thing. Basically, I'm shining a light down a hallway. It's brick. It looks creepy. I'm like, okay, so that's a good shot, and that's a good shot, and that's okay. And then I walk out the hallway, recording the whole thing. Well, every piece of video I do, even if it's B-roll or if it's actual session or whatever, noise canceling. Well, these aren't noise canceling, but noise canceling headphones go on, and I listen to the whole thing, because that's when the stuff's going to basically bubble up.
Right.
You're intending it for B-roll. That's nice. Someone else is going to be like, "Hey, it's my chance to talk to you." And this is what happened in this case, because I listened to it and I hear whispered male voice, "Let's go with him." And I was like, wait a minute, let's run that beautiful bean footage one more time. Let me hear that again, actually. So and I was like, no, that's about as clear as a bell of a whispered of, let's go with him. And I'm like, okay, so I had some fans, basically, some buddies, some pals, great. So then I go along, and again with the B-roll stuff, there's a cart that's in the hallway. Of course, you're always looking for little moments, whether you use them or not. You have them. Better to have too much than too little. And so I'm recording, basically kind of moving it so it's getting like the locked, rusty wheels along the ground. I'm moving it. Well, whoever basically hung out with me, because exact same male voice whispered, "Leave that here." And I was like, I mean, again, I did not hear that in the time. I only heard it when I listened back to it. I wasn't going to take that with me. It would have been hard to put that in the car. But, I left it alone and moved along.
That's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're hilarious.
And the fact that you could like line it up with what you were doing and talking about at the time totally validates what you heard.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's when, and again, talking about experiences, I mean, that's where, I know, someone could say, oh, you said that, I said that, I faked it or whatever. And it's like, well, there's no one else around me. There's no reason that I'm basically, because in those moments, I'm always zipped, sometimes even trying to hold my breath so that there's nothing that could possibly be recorded.
Yeah.
And here's these disembodied voices in two other cases. Of course, then the third cap on it basically would be down in the tunnels. And then that's where, as part of a group, let them move on. So I'm kind of doing my thing. And I'm like, well, I hope they don't try to wonder what I'm doing back here. But I'm trying to get some stuff and get away from y'all. Y'all do your little tour and whatever, recording some things. But eventually I catch up with, kind of most of the group and doing a bit of a spirit box session there and recording that and whatever. And I can't exactly recall off the top of my head where this came into it, but I think it's because I'd either stopped it and was just going to like have a little breath, or just before I started it. And this one was a little particularly cute because, and I'm going to mimic it basically just because, but very distinctively a disembodied voice said, "It's recording."
like from Lord of the Rings, it sounds
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of like a Gollum type of thing there, basically.
Yeah.
And I was, because I know at that point, it's like I was saying, like, if you got something to share, this device is recording or whatever. And so it was in relation to like indicating, yeah, he's recording it. But I was just like, of course, in most people, it's funny. You hear that and you think, okay, that's evil or that's demonic or that's a creature or whatever. And I'm like, okay, again, think about where you're at and think about what was done there. And think about how little it could take to affect your vocal cords, basically. Right. And if somebody got chopped in the throat or whatever, their voice is suddenly affected. Does that make them an evil, bad person, demon? No. It's just how it sounded. Right. And of course, in that moment, I didn't have any feelings about that because demons aren't everywhere. And so it was just very certainly not that type of moment. But I've had several people be like, "Oh, that was a demon." No, it wasn't.
I don't think a demon would care if you were recording. I don't think that's what it would say if it had a chance to say something.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of other things or done or whatever, or be like, "Oh, nice sulfur. That's nice," basically like that. Are you passing gas there, buddy? Go away.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
It's so funny though. I could like picture this almost like, what's that show called? G? Is it Ghosts? The Ghost.
Oh, CBS.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
like how they follow like the living room. Like, what are they doing? What are they doing? That has to be how it is, especially in asylums. They're probably like,
yeah, where they're bored out of their minds, and most of the time they're just sitting by themselves.
Right.
They're just living.
So funny.
Right. I mean, there's the other side of that, basically, is to imagine what's going on there. Because, again, everybody wants to focus on the creepy and the scary and the whatever else of it. And I'm like, do you realize that some of it could just also be that someone's like, "Hey, Bill, I'm going to mess with this person. Watch this."
100%. 100%. Especially, like, depending on how long they've been gone for. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we're talking, like, a few hundred years, they're probably like, let's create some fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And oh, by the way, if they tell me that this is a recorder one more time, because I know exactly what it is, all right?
100%. And
they're going like, look, they're trying to teach us how to use a flashlight again. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, dowsing rods. Okay, yeah, out, in, I got it. Can we skip to this, okay?
Yeah,
how about I stick it up your nose? How about that for a response?
That would be great. That would be great. Oh my gosh.
And we've never been to Penhurst, so we're like ready to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's definitely worth it for sure. There's something just kind of unique, and I think again, journalistic aspect. I think what helped kind of solidify the deal was a reporter back in the day. More so a day than me, basically, since he was doing that report. Well, yeah, okay, I was alive, so we won't actually make those type of comparisons. But this report was just basically breaking down what was going on in there, the expose. And so to have now the horrors brought to light, because, of course, most of these places would be like, I'm throwing someone away in there, basically. I don't want to take care of you anymore. You're, and there was even a point where it wouldn't matter what you didn't have to be even sick or crazy. You could just be just a little wound up, so to speak, and be like, "Oh, yeah, okay, so I don't want to do anything anymore. I'm actually going to take you up to the asylum." And to be stuck in there, that's its own special slice of hell, basically, at that point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Not cool.
And when you have a location like that gets investigated over and over and over again, you have to ask, like, we have this theory of these super popular locations getting investigated, that all of these investigations are actually changing the activity that occurs there, because you're putting all that energy in, you're feeding it these maybe once totally innocent or harmless spirits are growing off of that, evolving into something completely different because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, absolutely. This could even get along the concept to where and I had never heard of this until recent years of almost where we can. I'm personally, I'm not a huge fan of the word manifest, but for lack of a better one, basically, that we end up manifesting entities ourselves, basically. Because, I mean, especially however you want to slice and dice that is, I mean, let's say that, okay, so there's this legend that, okay, so there's a lady in blue, and because they have to be either brown, white, or blue, it seems like. Well, actually, red too. So there's your four colors. But so there's
a black blob.
See, you never have that because or actually you have that, and he's over there saying like, "Why does anyone ever talk about me? I'm over here. I'm a black blob, and nobody ever has a legend about me." But so we'll give the black blob credit right now, okay? So black blob is over there basically. There's a legend about him. And so people come and they're investigating, they're talking, they're trying to figure it out, basically. But maybe he's not even there. So then either A, some entity comes along and says, you know what? I'm going to be the black blob, actually. I'm digging this whole story, actually. I can get some legit ghost street cred here, basically, because I'm going to act this whole thing out. Or when you have people coming along, potentially even opening portals, again, like you said, you've got all these thoughts, all this energy, all this activity, and you're just bringing things that maybe were there but left, or came there because there's all sorts of slices.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
even like places like Lizzie Borden, where like everybody knows or quote unquote knows she's there. Probably whoever she is now that's in that house was nowhere near what she was 50 years ago, before people started doing this. That poor girl.
Oh, yeah. Well, and just like I mentioned Miriam basically before, one of the things exactly along those lines that there's a home in Gettysburg that's referred to as a murder house because there's a more recent incident. It happened in the 80s, basically. And that's kind of the whole legend that, this woman basically was killed by a boyfriend. And so she's there and she likes listening to Fleetwood Mac and she responds to everybody and all this stuff. Now, in a sense, it's like, well, you don't normally hear of recent because 80s, that's pretty recent. So in one sense, that's kind of a draw and it's interesting. You also get into that real fuzzy, uncomfortable area where, hey, there's still family around, and you're kind of basically having a tour that's kind of making money off of this person's death. It's real easy if they're like 100 years and more and whatever, and there's no one around. But Miriam had made the connection, and again, this is where I would trust her intuition of like. Basically, she's no longer in that house. There are spirits there that are messing with people that are there, but she's not. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing is like, you can have this whole legend and what's to say that you don't have someone who's basically taking that on and they're like, yeah, sure, that's me. I'm, okay, you want to say that, I'll go along with it. Basically, I'm happy. And in some cases, it could be to the detriment if people want to basically act a fool and not take precautions and whatever. And it's like, oh, you're a yummy little morsel I'm going to attach to, and I'm going to follow you home.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Anything's possible.
Yeah. Well, that's just because people don't take it seriously too. Basically, it's like, what are your intentions? Basically, are your intentions to help someone to get to the bottom of something, to solve a mystery? Or is your intention basically to get scared, to have a good time and not take it seriously and have no protection? And especially going to folks talk about going to cemeteries all the time, basically, as a great introduction. I'm like, yeah, it's creepy, it's spooky, but that's also where lovely things can hang out. And if you're going to come in there and you're going to be like, oh, this isn't really real, but it's creepy and it's spooky and it's all like that. And then you leave and you wonder why you have a headache, you feel sick. You've got, you have weeks and weeks of problems. It's like, yeah, okay, well, you picked up something, you big dolt. And it's just because you weren't taking precautions.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
That's what we always have all of our members go through psychic protection training before we even let them like step foot on an investigation.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately a lot of teams don't do. I mean, I guess it all goes by your belief system. So obviously whatever works for you, but don't go in blind either. Like know that you might have to do something about it if you don't be proactive about it.
Yeah. Well, 100%. Because, like, I mean, so basically, for me, basically having Christian faith, we always basically have a prayer before and after, and it certainly involves protection from warrior angels. But a perfect example of how, if you don't do that, would be when one of our team members, Mike Chen, was at the old burying grounds. They didn't call them cemeteries; they called them burying grounds down in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And this goes back 300 years, so this is ridiculously old. Lots of cool stories that are associated with that. And we were doing it live, basically. So Darren, the other co-founder of the group, he was in Arizona. I'm in Maryland. Mike is in North Carolina. And he's getting all this evidence, and Spirit Box got this stuff going on, and all this stuff, and it's like, okay, wow, this is pretty cool. But then all of a sudden, he is tearing through the cemetery in the dark, mind you, basically after like, oh, and we're thinking he's about to trip over something. It's just going to plaster. Like, dude, what is going on? And he had basically sensed that there was like some rustling in the shrub line that was rushing him, and it just freaked him out, and he ran out. And then he ended up having an attachment that we worked with a psychic artist who was able to draw his new girlfriend, basically, who really needed to actually get a little sunlight because she was really pale, and eat a burger or two because she was completely had a skull and had all this crazy hair going on like that, and had this little dude with kind of like a little top hat that was like his little friend. And I was like, Mike, wow, dude, that's see, you don't do things small. You just basically get this basically, creepy lady to attach to you. And so between all the things that Angela suggested, got rid of, but that's just an example to where you go in there and you don't take precautions and you think, oh, I'm just rushing and I'm going to get this done. That's the time something fun's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Well, some kind of F word. We'll go with fun.
Yeah. Oh, he said some live too, so that was just like, bro, basically. Yeah, I'm just glad that he didn't trip over a stone and break some teeth out or something like that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So that was an interesting term you just used, though, psychic artist.
Yes.
So I think that's how would you define a psychic artist?
So Angela's ability was unique, and working with Miriam and Angela came during COVID, when basically, like, our interest is really on the documenting and making episodes, but of course during that time we really couldn't do it, so we went to more of a live format. And so we had Unexplained Cases Live, Unexplained Cases Medium, and during that time met Angela. I'm still in contact with both Miriam and Angela, but Angela's ability is that I could give her a picture, or she could be talking with anyone, and she would be able to perceive the spirits around them. And so with her ability, which is kind of I guess it's more oil maybe than watercolor, but I think in a way she kind of does all of them sketch as well, basically. But she would like it's in Mike's case, to me that was definitely a sketch, basically.
Right.
And she can draw that out. And it's funny in some cases, because a part of that show would be we'd have a guest, And while we were interviewing the guest, Angela would be drawing what she saw and then present that live. And in so many cases, it was kind of wild and crazy that could be like a relative or a friend or maybe someone they had no idea. But it's an interesting ability, and it's one that before her and after, I don't hear that combination very often of a psychic artist.
Yeah, no, me neither. Now that I think about it.
Interesting, because so I always think that, mediums or psychics, they are perceiving the entities and the spirits the way that they're receiving the information. So you can have like 3 of them in the room and they can see it 3 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But she was actually able to see it the way the person who is with you would perceive it, it sounds like. Like she was picking up on what they were seeing almost. Am I wrong on that? Like they recognized her drawings, like what she would put on there?
Well, no, and they would recognize, let's say if it was a family member, for example, they could be like, oh, that's my uncle, that's my grandfather. That not necessarily the person, unless in some cases they had a thought of like, well, I've had this activity going on. I've always wondered if, and then maybe that could be a validation. But I mean, a lot of times just the detail basically, and she herself can actually see things. I've always found that to be a fascinating ability basically when, it's kind of, because I've even asked us like, okay, so you're not literally seeing with your eyes, it's more with your mind basically, I guess, that you're, looking at a spot and, you're seeing someone with their flesh falling off or something, which I'm like, again, what a terrible way basically to be walking around and like, do you know that that's going on, and does it bother you? Do you really like want to like kind of spruce yourself up if you're walking around like, fix this is hanging down? I don't know, but the drawings and the paintings that she would do sometimes is just like, wow, because again, you kind of think, I sometimes think about that show Flashback, Ghost Whisperer.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And how, in a way, she was, whether, for TV, of course, we're seeing things, but you're thinking what you see in the mind. And so many times, it's somebody, gunshot wound and all this type of things, basically. And you're like, wow, that goes into the talk about traumatic, basically, if that's how the entity perceives or how it's wanting to be perceived.
Right.
That's another slice of fascination, I guess.
Yeah.
That's
like
true.
the Sixth Sense, how he always saw them the way they
Oh,
died.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And we always talk about what we want our ghost clothes to be, like what we're gonna die in. We always think we're gonna be in the same outfit after we die. We're like, what do we want to die in? Pajamas.
Right. But then again, you think about how many must have passed away in their sleep because, they're walking around in their 90s basically or whatever like that. Or, sometimes it's a dress, but then why isn't it's ever anything more interesting than that, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, some people don't wear anything at all when they go to sleep. So that's
See?
for them.
And you don't hear too much about any naked, because there's naked and then there's naked ghosts, basically. So it depends on which part of the country you're from, or actually what's going on, because sometimes being naked is one thing, but if you naked, then you actually doing something. You up to the trouble. You skinny dipping.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's the more off-putting one, in my opinion.
Yes, there can be some off-puttingness going on there.
So note to self, let's not investigate a nudist colony anytime soon.
Yeah, you kind of, you know what to expect. And if you really don't want to expect, then you shouldn't go. Yeah.
100%.
See, my one job here is to keep Brittany in stitches. So far,
I can't.
I'm here for the yucks. So the yucks and the chucks. It's all good. So.
Oh my God. Well, we welcome it anytime, sir.
Sweet. Yes. Yeah, I don't know how your bullet points are doing, basically. I feel like we're just shredding them. But, I mean, I'm ready. So whatever's next. So.
We have 20 minutes left. That's okay. We'll figure it out.
Time was going to just poof. You know, it's just
What is time? You know, time technically doesn't exist, so that's fine.
we're outside of space, the time continuum right now. Actually, if we're in Star Trek, we're Q. All three of us are Q right now. So.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I was just watching Star Trek today.
Nice. Yeah, which one?
I'm rewatching the Picard series, so season 3. Yeah,
See.
so I just finished that. So.
See, and 3 pays it off because basically, like, you know, I will still have a spoiler free because I just prefer to do like that because you never know where anyone's at, basically. But it's like, you know, first season, you know, we're kind of coming along. It's interesting, kind of like, interesting tale on the whole. Yeah, Starfleet was supposed to be like all this, and we decided to get really gritty and really all. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then we just basically get really stupid and crazy at the end. And then we're going to like, hey, let's shove in the second season. And I'm like, okay, I see what you did there. So, you know, there you brought a little Q back. Okay, that's interesting. I haven't finished 3. You're rewatching. I haven't actually finished it. But I've seen enough bits and pieces. I was like, finally, I think this is what everybody wanted. And I think even the creators were like, well, we had to build up to it. And I'm like, did you? Did you have to build up to it? I mean, you could have just gone like just right there, basically.
Yeah. Well, season 3, they basically acted like season 2 didn't happen. Like season 2 was just kind of like, oh, that whole thing.
Yeah, that.
You know, time is a construct. We'll just pretend like season 2 is part of that construct that didn't happen. So we'll go with that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Ghostbusters with the all female cast, and if y'all happen to appreciate it, that you know, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to. I'm a truist. I'm just kind of like, I think that was an experiment, and it was lovely, and it was great. But you didn't basically have any type of homage. You're going to say, let me just bring in some of the actors, and we're not even going to call them what they are. And it's like, okay, so now you've made yourself non-existent. We're just going to basically take that thing and say, well, it never happened, because now Afterlife and this one, Chef's Kiss, fabulous. So
yeah, Brittany has feelings on that. She doesn't like remakes, so she's not a fan of even Afterlife. She wouldn't watch it.
So haven't seen it, and you're not going to. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, no. Just like, okay.
I still appreciate you. It's okay. We can still be friends. It's fine. So.
But they're remaking The Crow.
Yeah, I saw about that. I'm like, well, but that's because we can't have original stories anymore, so we have to remake everything.
It's very upsetting, though.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between a remake and an homage to something. Like, so Ghostbusters Afterlife was an homage to the original movies, and it's a continuation of the story. Just like to me, and it's not paranormal related, but like the new Jumanji movies, I thought were funny because it was a continuation of the first one.
See? And I just like the fact that we worked in an homage. So in case you didn't think that this was an intellectual show, we actually dropped 25 and 50 words sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Making it rain.
I love it. Well, there's a new Beetlejuice coming out too, so.
Oh,
but
see?
that you're okay with. I don't get it.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm a Tim Burton fan. Come on.
Well, sweet. Yeah, but so you're very selective on what you're okay with here.
You're
complicated.
talk about this all the time.
You're very complicated. I'm sorry, Gail.
Yes.
I'm used to it.
I figured you were.
I'm used to it. Me and Britt, here's how a Britt and Gail wine night goes.
Yeah.
We have a glass of wine. We talk about the paranormal. We go down rabbit holes. We start getting into like interdimensional beings and what if we are interdimensional beings and time is a construct. We fall down, and by the end of the night, we're talking about movies that we like, we don't like, and why they're stupid.
I mean, the whole thing could be its own podcast right there. I mean, that's pretty legit.
Yeah. I've been saying that for years. Have I not, Britt? I've been saying
you have. Well, then let's be about it.
I mean, come on. Oh, see. Oh, look at that. So, see, yeah, she's going to put it on you, basically, like, why haven't you been hitting record?
Right? Saying all the mental load on.
We'll create the podcast and we'll have you on it, Rick. Don't worry.
Sweet. That's fine. Basically, if nothing else, I could be the DJ in the background. Basically, I'll be laying down a fat flavor. So, oh yeah, come on.
Yeah, that's it. You're not even going to be a guest. You're just a part of the podcast.
Yeah. See, I'm just back there, basically. Yeah.
You're a hype man.
That's right. Come on. Hey, I'm happy to do that. It's all good.
There you go. Love it.
Oh Lordy, how do we get on these tangents? Honestly,
Rabbit holes, rabbit holes.
That can be our theme song for the podcast.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's nice. I don't ask me to sing that though. Basically, I can't repeat that again. So
You hit a good note. That was a good note.
Appreciate it. I don't know if I can repeat it.
I guess let's look at our outline.
I mean, if you want to, you went to all the trouble to put it together. So I want to be a good guest and say, yes, please use the stuff that you wrote. Okay.
We don't have to. Probably boring at this point.
But you may have you may have like there could be a quintessential checking a box there question. Alliteration, that's 2 boxes.
Ooh, making it rain again.
Woo.
That vocab lottery right there.
Cha-ching.
All right. Well, here's one for you.
Ooh.
For those with the passion for research and non-sensationalist areas of the paranormal, what advice would you give them?
Wow, that's a very intellectual question that you posed to me, Gail. Actually, I'll have to actually think about that for a moment. You know, I mean, basically, well, let's see if this is the answer that you were pondering. Not that you were pondering anything. Actually, your mind could be a clean slate right now, and I'm just kind of like just sliding in there, skidding along it. No, it's kind of like I think because I've gotten that question so many different times in different ways of like, you know, someone wants to start, you know, where they begin or whatever like that. And, you know, to me, I think it always starts with it's not complicated, but it does also start with your intentions. And therefore it starts with you because like people will say, oh, you know, what's a device? What's a tool I can get? And I'm like, well, you can use everything that we have, basically. You can have your K2 and your spirit box and your SLS and your dowsing rods and your whatchamacallits, basically. And that's fine. Yeah, because they come up with something, you know, different every other week, it seems like, because it's like, hey, let me charge a lot of money for this. But your body is your best tool. So it's kind of like, you know, for me, I can look at a place and I can be like, yeah, it's creepy, but okay. Or I can look at a place and be like, what you looking at? Don't be staring. Has anyone told you not to stare at a window like that and look at that way? Because it's just clear that there's something going on right there. Now, maybe there's an opportunity to check it out. Maybe there's not, but it starts there. And then I also just kind of like, you know, mentioned to people, it's like, you know, you've got a phone. And if you put it on airplane mode, so it's not getting a whole bunch of receptions and junk, it's a perfect voice recorder. So you can basically have an EVP session, just like me. Most of the stuff we shoot is on iPhone because you can do it in 4K. And it's a fantastically easy camera. Put it in a rig, light, external boom mic. Very simple to do. But right there, whether you're recording video or audio, you also can record things that you can come back and review. But it just kind of starts with what your intention is, basically. And if you have good intentions, then you can have good results. If you're going to act the fool, then you're going to get those results too, basically. Now, nothing wrong with acting a fool. I mean, everybody can be fun, but I'm talking about a particular kind. You walking up in a place provoking people, basically. Like, again, you want someone busting up in your place, yelling and screaming and carrying on and basically saying, show yourself and stuff like that. I'm like, I just got out of the shower. Do you really want me to show you myself? Do you? Because I will. Here we go. Take a picture.
I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, if you're, I think when people get a little too enthusiastic, like they're pushing to have that experience, that really opens them up to have the wrong kind of experience,
Right.
and they have to be cognizant of that. Oh, hey, look, another vocab word, cognizant.
Cognizant. We actually see this is where you could have a whole new layer to these, and it could even be kind of like, take a shot basically every time or whatever like that with words. It depends on the level, I mean, so that could make a very different show by the end of it. So.
I mean, people will enjoy it either way. I'm
sure. Absolutely, basically. I mean, that could be one to where, everyone here is definitely enjoying it, basically. If no one else is, like, whatever, that's fine. So.
Brittany, was there a question that you wanted to hit up? I feel like I've been dominating the hour with my question.
No, I mean, let me see. Oh, okay.
See, I knew you had a burning question. I could just tell. There was smoke coming out of your ears.
What type of stories do you love covering the most?
Honestly, I prefer, I make our comparison to say we're more like unsolved mysteries.
Okay.
But then sometimes I feel like we're actually unexplained ghost cases. Or ghost cases, because I feel like you can basically throw a stone and hit 2 or 3 stories, basically. So I'm always trying to find, whether it's UFO, cryptid, unsolved cases. Now, actually, there's one that I've just started working on that's in Alabama, and it's this gets a little near and dear in a way, because when you have a case, especially if basically, especially you had a search for a person and they were found, but, there's the police haven't helped. No one's helped solved it. It's almost been pushed off. So it's not even really a cold case. It's just kind of one that's like a whatever. That's when I step back and is like, well, you know what? But that was a life. Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter what their choices are, and it doesn't matter if you want to say, whatever about them, they were a drug addict, fill in the blank, basically, it's still a life, basically. And so especially if there's a tragic demise and there's not an answer, then therefore it's unexplained, then I like the opportunity to be able to, again, to document that, to talk to the people. And it's kind of like what I'm sharing right now with the folks involved, is like, what we're doing may not bring the closure as far as solving this, but at least it gives an opportunity for these folks to share this, to share their heart, to, again, preserve history, to put that out there. Now we've captured it. Now it's out there. And yeah, maybe what a huge blessing it would be if someone does see that and be like, well yeah, that jogged my memory. I remembered this. I saw this happen or whatever. And suddenly it could become something that could bring closure. But at least it's something to where it's recorded, and maybe it can bring some healing to the family.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I think that is one of the main goals a lot of investigators and researchers have, is obviously it's the knowledge, the search for truth, but it's also, at the end of the day, we're just looking to help people. And
yes.
Sometimes just telling their story helps to do that.
Absolutely. And I mean, you could even take it to another level of where, and I mean, this could be another rabbit hole to get down, and as far as the crossing over aspect, because to me, it's like, I would be one to say that, like, we, as investigators, or even as, mediums or psychics or whatever, we can't help a spirit crossover. Some might disagree with that, basically, but I'm like, to me, the crossing over is basically something that's happening, whether you want to call it heaven or the other side or whatever you want to call it, and the entity, the spirit. That's between the two of them, basically. Now, we might help to be able to say, hey, look up, basically, which, I mean, I find that interesting from a spiritual context, to where it's like, I mean, we look down, but I mean, would a spirit basically be looking down and be like, ho hum, basically, oh, look, there's a bright light? I mean, maybe, and I'm kind of making light of it a little bit, but it just feels kind of strange. But regardless, whether it's literally looking or whatever, it's kind of, again, shifting a focus. Right. And it's like, oh, maybe it's time for me to move on. Maybe I was, wrapped up in whatever, again, if you're going to bring in free will and choices and all like that, there is a degree of stuckness. There's a degree of whatever that's going on. And so there could be some help in that sense. But I mean, really, to me, I just look at it as that's between, the spirit and the other side there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very true. Very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not to end off on an intellectual note, as that was.
That did feel kind of brainy, basically. And I was looking at the time, and oh my goodness! See, this is what always happens. Is like we got on this ride, and we were going around corners and up and down, basically, and there was a lot of screaming, and sometimes there was white knuckling, and then here we are, basically. So, we could do this again. We could just go,
Of course, please. Absolutely. Well, we're not letting you off the hook just yet, because we do have one final question that we ask everybody at the end of our Q&As. And that is, everyone seems to have that one moment, whether it's an investigation or just an experience, where you're not quite sure, like, is the paranormal real or is spirit real? And then you have that moment where you go, oh shit, this is real, right? Mm-hmm. So we call it your oh shit moment. What, sir, is yours, if you have one?
When I thought it was real, I'll even admit, even having done this since, I guess, for realsies, since 1999, even today, sometimes I kind of have doubts, and I think it's healthy to doubt things, basically, and to step back. But as far as like when I knew that there was something that was going on, I'm not really sure if it would be chronological order, but it still is burned in my brain. Goes back to Mississippi, goes back to the city of Meridian, which is close to the border of Alabama. And there's a house that's called Marihope Mansion. Now, back then, maybe it was being tied to a TV station, had the pleasure of just, in this case, having the little old ladies give us the key and be like, you're welcome to stay. It's 5 o'clock, and we don't actually stay here after 5. But, so no money, no charge, but just like, y'all want to stay here? Here's the keys, basically. You don't find that happening too terribly much. You'd at least might be able to do that for a low price of 4 figures, basically. But so Darren, myself, and a photographer, Rob, we were there for the evening, and I think the real moment was later in the night when I'm following Darren behind with a field camera, which, then was also a little larger than they are now, but, it's kind of like you've seen reporters with the camera that's on the shoulder. So I have that. It's got a mic, which I know is not terribly sensitive, and a light that's not incredibly bright, but it's enough to be able to do this. And we go into this room, and we start hearing above us. Now, A, it clearly sounded like heavy footsteps. B, what's above us is the roof. C, we know that the roof, as most of these homes, has gravel on it. So then you also know like that. And so then, classic TV good moment is Darren whirling around and big-eyed going, like, hearing that? What is that? And even he says, like, do you hear that? And I'm like, yeah. And of course it's recorded. I'm like, it sounds like someone's walking on the roof. And so then we have all the moments trying to figure it out. Like, okay, could it have been Rob? Why would Rob be up on the roof? I don't know, but it's a question that you ask.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely nobody that could be up there. But it's like, okay. So, and that was just one moment of the evening, but that was the one that was like full on caught. Of course, the mic did pick it up. That's why I mentioned it wasn't sensitive enough. That's one of those moments where we have all the unrehearsed, unstaged, uncoerced reactions, but unfortunately, you can't actually hear the crunching that was going on.
Damn.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Hey, but it was 2001, so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
But it makes for a cool story.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And had the blessing to have quite a few of those basically over the years. But that's why it was nice to kick things off, bring it back onto YouTube. We were called Unexplained at the time, slapped on cases just to make it a little different. And that's what we've been doing since 2018, but 2019 is when we actually started putting episodes out.
Awesome.
Love it.
And there got some great ones there. I saw your most recent, your Mothman one. It was very entertaining.
Thank you. Those are a little bit more simplistic, but it's kind of one of those. Sometimes you kind of have to go for a little simpler route. I've got quite a few in the can, but we've also kind of gotten into the rhythm of like, I'd love to be a content creator, but there's also something called life. And content creation is not life, so it's a bit more of a hobby. So I'm kind of like, well, we'll just lean into the quality over quantity.
Yeah.
So we get them out as quickly as we can, and got some interesting ones in the proverbial can right now.
Okay. We look forward to watching some more.
Absolutely. So for anybody that wants to watch those YouTube videos, the link has been scrolling along on the bottom here. So, and they will also be exceptional scroll, yes. And it will also be linked in the YouTube video down below.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rick, for joining us tonight. It has been so much fun. Like, truly, love to have another conversation with you at some point.
Would love that.
Thank you. For those of you out there who enjoyed this conversation, because why wouldn't you? It was fun. Please feel free to subscribe, comment, like the video, click the little bell for the notifications for future posts. And as always, please remember to stay curious and be safe out there.
Yes, safety first.
Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic evening.